We are going to proceed having this discussion with Martin DiCicco, who is the director and cinematographer, who has won numerous awards in international films. He is you're the cinematographer for this film, right? Yes, thank you. And Natalie Monarrez, who you saw in the film, who is a 7-year employee, or was a 7-year employee.
I was a 7-year employee, yes.
Of Amazon, and we'll tell you a little bit of a story, but who is a critical player in this story and organizing Amazon. When I looked at I watched the movie this morning, it hit me how important the narrative and the story is for today and what's happening. Specifically after the last elections, and what does that mean for labor rights moving forward. But labor law and labor, the right of workers to organize has been under threat for workers for a long time. We at the Worker Institute at Cornell do focus a lot on what's happening to workers and what's happening to labor law and what we need to do to reform it and to support worker organizing. So when the Amazon organizing campaign began, I was one of those spectators watching what's going to happen, can they do it, and commenting on how the traditional labor movement was not as engaged as it should have been. But I was on the outs, just watching and wishing that they would be successful. So looking at watching the movie this morning, it just made me realize how much courage you had to launch that campaign.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And before I wanna launch this discussion with asking you, Martin. It seems like you were there from the start, that you were capturing the experiences from the beginning. So the first question I wanna ask to you and to share with the audience is, what made you think that this was a story worth telling?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for everyone for staying for this. Yeah, I think that all of us in the filmmaking team were intrigued by what was going on with Chris's, with his first walkout and over the COVID, lack of COVID precautions in the building, and he had press in 2020, and when there was rumors that he was gonna, or there was some talk that he and some of the other people at the beginning were gonna start a union, everyone in the filmmaking team thought that this was like quite important to follow from the beginning. Because they were so far independent at the beginning, we thought, oh, maybe they'll affiliate with some big union, but it started out really small and without any support, and that's how it continued for the majority of the campaign. But at the beginning, it was like, oh my God, like, how do they think they can do this? Like, they need institutional support, and so it was always something that was quite interesting to watch from the beginning. And so, I don't know, they were all very fun to be around and inspiring to watch as they were figuring it out. I think and so we just kept day in and day out, kept continuing being with them.
The story was focused on the narrative of what's happening in their lives, why they're doing this. So they gave you a lot of access to capture the story, and I'll get to that part. How did you go about gaining that access and that trust?
I think, I don't know, I mean, maybe Nat can speak on that, what it's like having me around and Steve shooting all the time. But I think that...
All the time. Day and night, every day.
I mean, I think that, look, I think that there was always cameras in and out of the campaign, but they were never there for long enough. Somebody would come in, they'd film, and then they'd leave. And I think you can be able to show intimacy on the screen because you're there. Like, it's just time is really the answer to that, I think. But in terms of how to let us in, I don't know. That would be, the trust question would be a you question.
So that gets me to Natalie, then I'll ask you this question. We know a little bit about your life when you are on the phone with Chris Smalls early on the film. I don't know you remember when you were telling him that you were sleeping in your car.
And I did not know he was being filmed during that conversation.
But it showed a lot of trust and intimacy, and a lot of for you to share that part about your own personal life. My question is, there was a lot happening to a lot of workers' lives, but at one moment, for you, was the moment that I said, I need to fight for this union.
I was actually working a 6-hour overtime shift, and when I went to the ladies' room, I had a young male manager start screaming and cursing at me for having to use the ladies' room, and he physically pushed me back away from the door. And when I tried getting in again, he pushed me back even harder and almost knocked me down. And at that point, after already dealing with multiple years at Amazon, because I worked in New Jersey and New York, and dealing with the constant harassment and discrimination that especially the women deal with every single day, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So that's when I marched across the street to the public area where we had our canopy set up for the ALU, and I said, sign me up. And it was 24/7 from that moment on for the next year.
Amazing. Coming from the labor movement and having been a strategic campaigner and organizer from the traditional labor movement, to me was impactful to see all of you day after day outside with the computer working. And I said, oh, wow, it takes a lot of determination and courage to do that, belief that you can do it. There's another scene that was impactful to me. I want to ask you about this because you just mentioned it. When there is a young organizer talking to a worker, and the workers keep saying, we need a bigger union. We need a union with more resources. We need you guys are too young. We need somebody who knows what they're doing. And the young organizer kept saying, they're not coming. They're not coming. We gotta do this. So, did you believe that?
No. They did come. We actually joined with the Teamsters this summer. The workers voted almost unanimously, like 95% of the 8,000 workers voted to be part of the Teamsters. So we're no longer the ALU, we are now the Amazon Labor Union International Brotherhood of Teamsters, local #1 in New York.
Yes. But at that moment, the organizers believed that the labor movement was not coming.
Correct.
Yeah.
They were convinced, but I knew in 2021 that we had representatives from various national unions coming to our canopy tent on the public street in between the 4 Amazon buildings, and they were checking up on us every single week. So I knew there was interest there, and I knew that they were smart enough also to know that a small, inexperienced team of people could not take on a Goliath like Amazon by themselves. We needed the power of a national backing, and thank God we now have it. And we'll see what happens this holiday season if they decide to strike, which is really going to hit Amazon in their pocketbooks. Hopefully it will push them to the table so we can start negotiating a contract.
Great. But it's important to me to understand for the audience and for anybody who watches this film, is that at that moment in time when all of you were trying to organize LAU, a lot of people didn't believe it could be done. We hadn't had one union win. So at some point, there was a realization that they needed a bigger union to come. But at that point, some workers believed that you guys could win. So I want to take you back to that moment. Why did you believe you could build a union at LAU?
It was more about just being fed up with the issues that we were dealing with constantly at Amazon, as well as knowing that management would not change, the Amazon executives would not change. I was doing my best, not just in the JFK building, but also on social media every night and talking with journalists and reporters to share stories. And we did gain support because of that, but at the same time, we were just realistic about the fact that billionaires control our economy, and they were not going to back down. They wanted 100% of the control. But luckily, most of our organizers were extremely young, and they honestly believed that we could pull it off. So I don't know, maybe that's because of their lack of experience, but they were extremely optimistic. And I was dedicated to hanging in there as long as I could until we had an election date.
Awesome. The audacity of hope, have you heard that saying?
Yes, exactly, the audacity of hope.
When you're young and you still believe and then you can take on anything, I think that's always what transforms movements, you know,
Right.
young people. And then folks like you who supporting them to get them across the finish line. One of the things that I want to ask you too, Martin, something that I enjoy about the film is that you did intertwine the organizers' personal lives and their personal stories with the dynamics that were going on outside in the tent, but also with the police. And there was a lot of tense moments that they were debating strategy. You also show Chris Smalls as a very determined, charismatic leader who had very strong opinions. So it was captured in some of his fault, but also a little bit of his determination to get this done. What were you trying to capture when you were in the when you captured those very tense moments in the film? What were you trying to? What do you think that meant at that moment for the movement?
I mean, I think that when we were all involved in discussing starting the film with Chris, you know, Chris had said, like, you all need to shoot everything. You need to show everything that's going to happen. The good moments and the bad moments, of course. So we thought it was quite important to keep the arguing in there, keep all the shit talking and all this stuff, because that stuff is real. When you're in a family or when you're in a group dynamics or in a work environment or whatever, when you're close and people are working toward a goal, that stuff comes up. And to eliminate that, to eliminate the squabbles and the fighting, would be to not show an honest picture of how this organizing was done. And yeah, that was always the intention, was to try to be faithful to that, to show what was happening in an honest way.
I ask you this question because your leadership is hard. It doesn't matter where you're at. And when you are doing something that hasn't been done before, which is to organize against Amazon and all the pressures that comes with a corporate giant spending millions of dollars to squash the hope of the organizers. I think, to me, that drawing the tension demonstrates how hard it was to keep that movement going and how courageous all of you had to be to believe that it could be done. So I find that like the most unique part of the film, because even though that's happening, you still are hopeful that they care about what they're doing and that they're hopeful. So I'll ask you this last question, and I'll take questions from the audience for either one of them. So you won the election. Amazon's still stalling to give a union contract. It's been a long haul, it's been a long battle. You got fired recently, a month ago, from Amazon. Amazon is still employs 1.5 million employees, one of the largest employers, and still union busting. Yes. What gives you hope, and what makes you believe that you made the right choice to organize? And what is your hope?
I hope that with the backing of the Teamsters, I hope that they can hold enough strikes to make Amazon realize that every single day that the workers are outside striking, they're literally losing millions of dollars every single day, even at just one location, because the warehouse in Staten Island is the biggest warehouse fulfillment center in New York. So they're going to lose a lot of money. They have to ask themselves, is it worth it? And with all the press and the media attention, any of the new hires that would be coming in already know that it's going to be difficult for them to come in because Amazon doesn't even want to keep full-time employees anymore. They want to bring in people and then right away within 90 days get them out. So it's a way of keeping people at base pay, and I think we've had enough media coverage, especially now with the film out. I think that new hires, anybody coming in, is going to know that their days are numbered anyway. So why not join the fight? Why don't the customers and the shareholders help us out? Actually, the shareholders are probably related to Jeff Bezos. I'm sure they are. But I think that we've changed a lot of people's minds. A lot of people have canceled their Prime membership. A lot of people have started shopping at their local shopping centers or local businesses, which I'm very happy about. And we've hit them in the pocketbook, and it's going to get worse if they don't do the right thing and come to the table. So I hope they do the right thing. I don't know if they ever will, but the workers, like you said, are very audacious, very hopeful, and they're mad. They want change. So I hope they get their contract.
I could keep asking you questions, both of you, but I wanted to see if there's any questions from the audience.
So when the police showed up and they said anybody who doesn't work for Amazon has to leave, I was surprised they didn't make you leave. Why, I mean, you think they wouldn't, I mean, you fit that, you know, you didn't work for Amazon, so why were you allowed to be there?
Well, in that particular moment, things escalated quite quickly. So, but you know, that was not the first time that the police had shown up nor arrested anyone in the ALU. Brett Daniels was arrested for being at the tent or not taking down the tent. Previously, the police had shown up a couple times to try to shut them down, but that was the first time that Chris and Brett and Jason all three were arrested. And I don't know, I mean, it's you know, the whole time working on the film, there was this, we were discussing the gray area of public and private property. Because, and I don't know about other buildings and other Amazon buildings, but this arrest all had to do with public and private property because of enforcing laws for this. But the key to the organizing was also the fact that there's a bus stop which is public property. And so it's this weird gray area where the bus stop is there, which is an MTA bus stop. Anyone in the public can take the S90 to the end of the line and be there. Just like it was a bus stop in Manhattan. But it's on private property, so I don't know what the directive was between Amazon and that precinct to discuss this, but Chris was there every day delivering food to the workers during break times, at least in that month that it happened in February. So I don't know what the discussion was between Amazon and the precinct, but why we were allowed to be there, you know, I don't know. There were about 6 other people that.
I kept waiting for you to get shut, you know, like the cameras to go like.
Well, yeah, that was Steve who was yelled at by the cop. Thankfully, I mean, nothing happened to him, but.
There's another question.
Have you had a chance to show this in unions, and in particular in unions that are actively organizing, or are you planning to do that kind of outreach?
Yes, the film's website, unionthefilm.com, there's a lot of information about how to connect if you're from a union or you're part of a different kind of community organization that would want to host the film. We are actively launching a campaign. I have already launched a campaign to connect with specifically Amazon workers and then non-Amazon unions as well. There are efforts, yes, to organize within New York and also the New Jersey area with Amazon buildings and through the Teamsters as well. And we've been involved with discussions with that union to show the film as well to workers.
Any other questions?
Were any complaints filed with the Labor Department of federal and state labor that they violated labor laws? Was anything filed on that?
Yes, they violated many.
What evidence that they actually, the laws they violated? And they couldn't
Right.
enforce them, with the Labor Department would not enforce these laws?
You know what, the two VPs, the co-VPs, Connor Spence and Derek Palmer and I, all filed multiple charges in 2021. We testified in hearings in 2022, and in 2023, the judge decided in our favor. We won our case. Of course, Amazon immediately appealed it, but I made a point of blasting it all over social media to let everybody know what was happening. And they continue. I mean, even my termination was considered an unfair labor practice because I had testified in multiple hearings and because I was a former lead organizer. So they're still doing it. They're still breaking the law. I don't know how many of you know this, but Jeff Bezos actually filed in court earlier this year to have the NLRB abolished.
What?
And the Trader Joe's CEO joined him in that legal battle, Elon Musk. I'm not sure, I know Elon Musk was interested. He may have joined them as well. But the billionaires are basically trying to get rid of the labor board, which I believe was created by Roosevelt.
Yes.
And it's a federal agency, but that's how arrogant and narcissistic these billionaires are. They want complete control, but the NLRB has amazing lawyers. I know some incredible people that work there that have been really helpful to the ALU. And I know they're going to keep fighting. They're going to keep fighting that. That's what they do.
And this is a good moment to reflect, and I'll ask you this, Megan, to prepare your questions, about why showing this film is important right now, because what you just mentioned is indeed a fact. The National Labor Relations Act gives workers the right to organize in this country. And the NLRB is the enforcement agency. But during the Trump years, and even before, it was highly underfunded, and it was not enforcing labor rights for the last 15 years. And I think that President Biden did do a little bit better job of funding it so that it could enforce and be more labor friendly, which is what they're supposed to do. So we're entering another 5 years of Donald Trump, who has already said that he will make the NLRB less worker friendly. In that moment, what does this film mean right now? To educate the public about the power of corporate America. Yeah.
I mean, I think it gets down to spreading the word with people like you. I mean, this is the thing. If you believe in what Natalie and the rest of the ALU is doing as an organizer to improve people's workplaces, this is something that is we're a small filmmaking team that is releasing the film on our own, and we need the help of everyone to spread the word. What does this mean in terms of like national politics? I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's interesting how, in my opinion, watching all the talk and everything this election cycle, how much did the word union come up? Like barely ever. I mean, both sides, forget like whatever you think one party or the other party did, but like I don't think that either party really talked about workers that much and talked about unions. I don't know, what do you think, Natalie?
That's why we lost the working class. What do you think?
I'm devastated that Trump won. That's going to be hard for a lot of people in this country. But I still think that because of COVID, I think that workers are pissed off. And if they survived COVID while their employers were making a profit, they're going to be angry enough to keep fighting for what's right. And it's not just about harassment and discrimination. We literally have Amazon workers dying every summer and at the end of every year during Prime Weeks and also during the holidays, during peak season, because they're being forced to work 60-hour work weeks. And they're working as fast and as hard as they can in hot warehouses. And even the delivery drivers don't have air conditioning. So we're not just talking about minor issues, we're talking about life and death. So I hope that the organizers keep fighting for it. I intend to keep fighting for it even though I'm no longer an employee. But this literally is about life and death, so I'm not going to stop, and I hope that none of them do either, regardless of who's president.
I've hesitated to speak up because I can't name the book that I read. Frances McDormand was in a movie that was
Nomadland.
But the book was, the name of that was what?
Nomadland.
The book was the same name?
Yes.
Because it took a different slant. But anyway, wonderful reading, and I really wanted to start with, what a fabulous film, absolutely fabulous. So if you want to study this more, these are two resources. The movie is more lighthearted, I would say. The book really gets into it and says the same things that you said today, but anyway, thank you, wonderful.
Good shout out. The Nomadland, the book, in my opinion, the book is superior to the film. The film took, I think, a bit, I mean, there's a trade-off when you agree, when you're allowed to shoot inside an Amazon building. The trade-off is, obviously, you can see it in the film. But Jess Bruder's a friend of the film team who wrote Nomadland. She's an incredible writer and highly recommended everyone read that book.
And then I do have a question, and I don't know if this is appropriate. Where's Chris now? What's going on?
Chris decided not to run for president when we actually had board elections after 3 years of having self-appointed leadership in the Amazon Labor Union. So from what I have heard, he is now like a global ambassador for the Teamsters organization, and he is trying to help unionize other locations. We also have a handful of former lead organizers that are also working for the Teamsters, some of them in other states. So Chris is a very charismatic person,
Yes.
and the victory that he had was historic with the Amazon Labor Union. I just like to remind people that he didn't do it by himself. He had dozens of workers and thousands of workers inside the buildings. And we literally had thousands of supporters, not just in New York, but all over the world, really, because he's traveled all over the world, too. But it's definitely, it was absolutely a group effort, and I think it really showed just how much workers are fed up globally, as well as domestically. And there's a lot of good people there that are willing to be supportive. And we appreciated that.
Following on that, and then I think this is going to close soon, one of the most significant things that we learned from the experience of Chris is looking at him as a charismatic leader, but also somebody who inspired a moment. But then the whole discussion about union democracy and the whole discussion about gender dynamics, and I think that's critical as workers go into how to build an organization that is inclusive, is respectful, and is different than the gender norms of dominate so that is part of union democracy, and how do you continue to push forward that part of engaging in a process of building power, an organization that is still dominated by men. The Teamsters is still a union dominated by men, and as a woman, how do you still balance that that dynamics?
I have been going to Q&As and screenings quite a bit for this film, and I make a point of telling especially the women, it's time for them, and we're used to doing most of the work and not getting any of the credit for it, so I encourage the women to run for the board, to run for secretary, treasurer, president, to be on the committees, and I encourage them, speak up. If you're being mistreated, speak up. Because we expect our union leaders to also be accountable the same way that we want to hold our employers accountable. So I'm not going to shut up about it. So I'm very much into labor rights as well as women's rights. And I intend to encourage and uplift as many women as possible to keep on fighting and to keep on defending themselves and each other.
Thank you so much for your courage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for making the film.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.